Well, hello YouTube and welcome back to Retired for Life cooking classes. Yes, I do other things besides working, playing outdoors. I do like to spend time in the kitchen, and I've shared a couple of recipes with you folks, and I've got one more here that is a Christmas-based recipe, and that is a classic shortbread. I have got a lot of very favorable comments back about my shortbread. People really enjoy it. And it does take a little bit of work. But I have been accused by some people of liking this recipe mainly because of the power tools involved. That is categorically not necessarily false. Anyway, we're going to get suited up. We'll get baking. Right, there you go. Let's go through our ingredients list here. So I got this recipe from my mother, and she got it from my dad's mother, who was very, very Scottish. So I'm assuming that this is a pretty Scottish recipe, and it is a very simple recipe. So this will consist of 1 pound of butter, which we have right there. Now I'm using unsalted butter because that's pretty much mostly what I have. So to make up for that, I'm going to add in 4 grams of sea salt. Now this is a nice pure salt, but I need to crush it down a little bit to make it into a powder, which is why it's in the mortar and pestle here. And then there is 543 grams of all-purpose unbleached flour. Don't use the bleached stuff. Make sure you get unbleached flour. And on top of that, I've got 140 grams of rice flour. Now the rice flour is what helps give it its kind of crumbly texture. And that's important so you don't have just a hard cookie. I don't like them being just hard. So rice flour really adds in that. And the other thing that adds to that really nice texture is how much you work your dough. And that's a lot. That's the tough one with this, is all the kneading that dough needs. So we're gonna start off by getting our butter into this lovely KitchenAid machine and start getting it softened up and ready to go. Now I did leave my butter out overnight to soften, so that shouldn't take too much. So let's get to work. So I have the dough blade on for this part. And we're going to cube up our butter just a little bit and drop it in. All right, let's take a few passes here. All right, that's all that needs to get it started. Now we're going to add the sugar. Now, did I mention sugar? I don't think I mentioned the amount of sugar. So this requires 200 grams of sugar. Now the recipe actually calls for fruit sugar. Fruit sugar is a more finely ground sugar. Not quite as fine as icing sugar. Besides, icing sugar has other stuff in it that you don't want in this. But it is much more finely ground than regular sugar that you buy. And fruit sugar seems to be very hard to find. So my workaround to that is just to take a regular sugar and throw it in the Vitamix here for a little bit, give it a few jogs, and then it will be good to use. All right, there's our sugar. And we'll make sure we've got the cap on so we don't make a mess, which I've done before. Okay, so we're going to turn this on, turn it up. It doesn't take much, and we're already pretty much there. So there it is. It is pretty powdery, but as I say, not like icing sugar. And you want it powdery like this because you want it to blend in nicely with your dough. So fruit sugar is really a pretty good sugar for baking and that kind of thing. As I said earlier though, unfortunately, you gotta kind of make your own. But that's okay, it's not very hard. Okay, so we are gonna take our fruit sugar, add it in here. You don't want your speed to be up high when you're doing this kind of thing, or you'll have fruit sugar in the air. All right, that's starting to look pretty good. So let's get our salt in there next. We've got our 5 grams of sea salt. So all it takes is a little bit of twirling around in here. What part is the mortar and what part is the pestle? I'm not sure. Now you can use kosher salt if you want. It's a little more coarse, where the sea salt that I've got is already just as fine as your regular table salt. So it doesn't take too much to get it to where you want it to be. Okay, let's add that in. Right, done with that. Next, the rice flour. We've got our 200 grams of rice flour. Again, go slow. Okay, let's get our dough blade out of the way here for a minute. Then comes the fun stuff, the flour. Have a little refreshment. So we'll clean up what we've got here so far, and then we're going to move to our pastry board. So that's going to be about as much as our KitchenAid beater is going to be able to do for us. Next is the handwork. So the fun part with the power tools is pretty much over now. So I've got this leftover laminate board from another project that I did. And it works perfect. This I just had left over from another project. Not expensive. Okay, so this is where it gets messy. You can see how crumbly this is as we start. We need to change that. You can see how it's starting to come together here. The crumbliness to the dough is going away. We want our dough to be smooth. Okay, I'm going to keep at this for another 3 or 4 minutes anyway, and then I'll show you what we end up with. All right, there we go. We've got a nice, soft dough ball here. And as I move it around, I'm not seeing it all crack and that kind of thing. So that's good. Now, see how nice and uniform that is? So the next step is rolling this out. Now I like to get things rolled nice and uniform, and that can be tricky. So I'm going to show you the aid that I have for doing that. But that's going to require a trip out to the shop and to run some more tools. Why not? Okay folks, so what we need is a guide for our rollers to give us a nice, smooth, even thickness of cookie. And that's important to me because I like things to be nice and even, and it also gives me a chance to play out in the shop again for a little thing. And a nice even cookie bakes much better. So I've got a couple of pieces of clear pine here that I ran off on the table saw. So that's not really a good enough finish that I want. So I'm going to run them through the planer to take them down to the sizes that I want. So I'm going to have two sizes on these. I'm going to have a 1/2 inch and then turn it over and have 3/8, just so I've got different dimension to play with and I can use them for different doughs. All right, let's get the planer going. We'll run these through, get them down to size. So it is important to use clear pine. You don't want any knots or anything like that in this, or it'll warp and give you an issue if that happens, and they could break too. So these are about 2 feet long. All right, let's get them through the planer. It's a cold, snowy day out here today. All right, folks, we've got our roller guides. Let's get to work. So I have my oven preheating here at 325. We'll start rolling this stuff out. And I think what we're going to do is use the 3/8 size here, and we'll see how that looks. I know people do make these thinner, but I don't like them to be too thin because I find that they, again, get crispy. Okay, so there's our first ball rolled out. I really like the looks of that. This is where I differ a little bit from the traditional shortbread. It used to be we just cut these along here and into triangle shapes, about 1 inch wide and maybe 3 inches long kind of thing, and then work them with a fork a little bit. I stray away a little bit from that. Sorry, Grandma. So I like to use different kind of Christmassy shapes kind of thing. So what do we got here? We got a star, got a snowflake, got a gingerbread man, Christmas tree, holly leaf, a little one, angels, and I don't know what you would call that, and a rabbit. That's a fairly big cookie. And of course, a maple leaf. So let's start pressing these out and we'll get them onto our tray. Now this part isn't necessary. It does take longer. You can just do the traditional way and cut them into those rectangular shapes. But we have kids come over for a Christmas celebration. We give them away, and it is just kind of fun to do this with them. We'll squeeze in as many as we can here. All right, there's our angels. Now, let's upsize here. Put a couple of snowflakes in. Yes. Now we need to get them out of here, and this can be the tricky part. I really like this spatula. It does a great job at this kind of thing. And because my board is nice and smooth, that also makes it a lot easier to lift these off. All right, guys, so we've got our cookies all cut and on the trays. And as I say, that's deviating a little bit from tradition. I think we'll deviate just a little bit farther. I'll show you what we're doing. So, kind of the traditional thing here. We'll poke these a little bit with the fork. Okay, now this is where we really get carried away. All right, so I want kind of a Christmassy color mix here. So I've got blue, red, and green. Now don't worry about getting a little bit on the tray because you're really not hot enough to melt the sugar. And it is made for this kind of thing. So our oven is at temperature at 325. We're going to get the other tray ready, pop these in the oven, and this will take about 30 minutes to bake. And while that's going on, I'm going to make another batch of dough because I need to make 4 batches today. Going to make for a long day. One thing I forgot to mention, which is kind of important, sugar cookies have a tendency to have the sugar drop off pretty easily. What I like to do is I've got this little spice bottle and I just very gently run that over the top of my cookies, and that presses the sugar down into your dough. And you'll find that your sugar will stay on your cookies much better after they're baked. All right, guys, let's see what we've got. So they've been in here for about 35 minutes now. At 15 minutes, I took the 2 trays out, turned them and reversed position top for bottom kind of thing, just to make sure that we're getting a nice even cooking. I think we're done.
that is a beautiful thing. They may even be just slightly overdone. I'll give you a closer look here. So you can see that they're starting to brown a little bit around the edges, and I do try to avoid that for the most part. So I will give the next batch just a few minutes less cooking. It's hard to tell when they're in the oven, but that just looks beautiful. I think we're ready. Well, there we are. That is about 2/3 of the first batch of dough. So we'll get quite a few cookies out of them, and I'm very happy with the thickness, the 3/8 of an inch thickness. I think that looks great. And now while the oven's hot, we'll keep right on rolling. So I know this is something pretty different for me. You guys don't see me too often in here playing in the kitchen, even though I do it quite a bit. So let me know what you think. Do you find these videos interesting? Maybe a little entertaining? I'd really like to hear from you about that. So that is going to be it for today's video. I'm going to keep working away here. I've got a few more hours worth of work. Get all these cookies done. One quick detail I forgot to add. Shortbread cookies need to age. So I'm a little late on this. Normally you'd want to make these early, mid-September, package them up, and then let them age. Does make for a better cookie. And that's one more job complete towards being ready for Christmas. So thanks very much for watching, folks. Remember to stay safe out there, and we'll see you out on the trails the next time.
Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas.